Hey, thanks for coming, everybody. We're Trifonic. I'm Brian.
I'm Laurence.
We're brothers. Um, and so today I'm excited to sort of go through the production process of our music, and it's not only just like sort of how to make a certain sound, but also a lot of it that I sort of interested in and is the process of like how an idea develops. And hopefully, depending on, because I'm going to be using Logic today, but if depending on like whatever you use, hopefully it should be applicable, and at least the process, is relevant, I think, to any program. So yeah, I'm going to talk about a couple different things, and then Lawrence is going to talk about the business side of stuff.
Yeah, so I'm going to let Brian start off. He's going to go through the nitty-gritty of some of the production process, and I'm going to come back up here at the end, talk a little bit more generally about how we work together, sort of what our workflow is like a bit, and then also about sort of the business and marketing side, which I handle. So there we go.
Okay, cool. So just to give you an introduction sort of what we do, I'm going to show you a video of ours of the track Parks on Fire, and then I'll go through the production process on this song. Okay, so yeah, we pulled that together in an afternoon. No, that took a very long time, and it's probably from start to finish. That song, I mean, with some gaps in between, was about a year and a half. So it wasn't quick, and as you'll see, it could have gone in a bunch of different directions, and it didn't start out with any particularly unique or amazing ideas, but I think it developed nicely over time. And then, of course, it's really great to have a super cool video by our friend Scott Pagano. Anyway, what we're looking at here is the very first session. And basically, at the time, I was listening to a lot of like minimal techno stuff and sort of clicky music. And like Murkoff is someone that I really like. And so I was just trying to I didn't really know much about that production style, at least in terms of what was happening. So I was trying to sort of imitate it. So I'll play you. This is the very first session from here. So pretty stripped down, just trying to get a little clicky beat. But the interesting thing from even this very simple session is that a lot of these sort of clicking sounds actually became themes that you hear in the final finished version, or are there at least in the background. And so I don't know, like a lot of things, like the starting place was just basically anywhere. And so I was just trying to gather a bunch of click sounds. And so there's a number of different ways to make that sort of thing. So in this case, it started as a piece of a cello sample. So I'll make this bigger so that you all can see what's happening here. So if I zoom out here, this is like the sort of attack part of a cello, and it's stretched. The end there, you can hear you can see these wave cycles are repeating. So it's kind of all stretched out. So there's that little clicky bit, and then I have this little thing here. I'll zoom out here, and so basically made this out of a little piece of cello audio, and then these clicking sounds. I was just experimenting. So what I did was, let's see if I zoom in here. Basically, just took a few samples and normalized it, to increase the gain of just this little section to make just a little peak. And then just copied and pasted it in a pattern that looked nice, and it sounded cool too. I wanted something that sort of slowed down, but really, pretty primitive. But I was curious just to explore audio and see what I could do with that. And the sound that ended up happening that I like and that actually does end up in the final track, even though not much else in this session does, is this combination of things here. So more or less all I did was just take this audio portion here and spread it out across a few tracks. And if you look at sort of the EQ on it, here's the original here, it's pretty extreme. It's it's really high pass filtered and then boosting the highs, because without that, it's a really boomy sound. Very different sort of like knocking sound than these really top end clicks. And so then on each channel here, the panning's a little bit different. The EQ effects chain, and there's some like reverb and delay on some of them. And so that was a way of sort of adding more interest to this little clicking sound. But other than that, there's not too much going on in here in this very first session. Had a little piano hit, kind of nice. And I think probably what actually makes that sound interesting is that there's a distortion on here, trash, and if you get rid of that, sounds a lot different. So it even changes kind of the melodic tonality of it, just the way it distorts. Anyway, this is sort of starting place. And by the way, like as I go through anything or demonstrating anything, feel free to ask any questions, or that you can jump in with anything. So okay, so this is sort of the highlights, because there's something like, I think there's more than 60 sessions for this song. So I'm going to show just a few of them, because otherwise it would take all year. So this next session here, I think I'd start to develop this idea a little bit more and add a little bit more clicks. I was trying to get more variety of that, because again, that's sort of the time, that's what I was listening to, is the clicky sounds, but and added in a little 808 kick drum sort of thing. And basically what I wanted to do as well was, I wanted to do something in 6/8. It's one of my favorite time signatures, and just because it has this feeling of perpetual motion, I feel like it keeps moving forward. I guess any of the sort of meters that are based on 3 feel like that they have this momentum to it that's nice, and you don't hear it too much in electronic music. So I was like, all right, let me explore this. So in this session, basically, I have the same things that were before, and now that it's just consolidated into one audio file here. And I'll make this window bigger so that when I click on other audio files, that you can see clearly. So I just combined those clicks from the last session, and then what I have here is another set of clicky style sounds. And these ones I have, again, and you'll notice that this is sort of a common technique that I'll use in terms of production, is explore sort of the same sound spread out on a few different tracks. And a lot of times I like to work with actual audio slices here. Like that's what I'm dealing with here, instead of MIDI, just because you can see, like, you can be very precise where things cut off. And of course you can do that with MIDI as well. It's just with audio, like what you see is what you get. Yes?
Do you find that you immediately render things to audio?
Yeah, and yes, definitely. And for the people that are watching this streaming, I think what I'll do is repeat questions, just because there's a couple people that are watching this on the internet. So he was asking if I usually render things to audio immediately, and I like to do that, yeah, because I just feel like that also it forces you to sort of move forward. You process something to audio, and then you can just continue on with it and continue to process it more. Because the way that I look at it now, and not to go off on too much of like a tangent, but on a philosophical end, but it's like we have more options than ever in terms of producing music and software and plugins and effects. And the beautiful thing is like we have access to it now, and it's not that expensive, and that's great. And you have unlimited undo and saves. But at the same time, I think it can also be sort of stifling when you have too many choices. It's really hard to make decisions. It's really hard to be confident in your decisions. So in some ways, when you print something to audio, I mean, you can always undo it or go back to a previous thing. But like I find that I just don't do that as much. When I print something to audio, I usually just move forward. So I like to do that because I think by nature sometimes I can be indecisive, and the more that sometimes I'll dwell on something or think about it, then the more you begin to question it. So I think it's a balance of going with your instincts on things and also using your better judgment. But sometimes if you overthink stuff, it can be take away from what originally you were feeling or trying to do. So that's sort of a long answer to a simple question, but yeah, no, I definitely like to print things to audio, and in this case, basically what these are just like the first little snippets of it was some drum slices, and so I've in this audio file there's a couple different ones, and some of these other ones that are really high pitched. If we look at it here, let's see here. So if I zoom in real far, you can see that this waveform is very repetitive in a small way. So to get these like little high-pitched sounds, what I try to do is just take a little bit like this and literally just copy it, paste it in the sample editor. So it started as probably this little portion here, but there's a lot you can do with these like simple tools that we forget about, because like now there's like so many awesome tools for synthesis and sampling and doing granular things, and you forget about like the old school like in a sample editor copying and pasting things as a way of experimenting and generating sounds. So copying these little short bits of a wave cycle, you can get all sorts of interesting clicks and high-pitched sounds, that sort of sound, which this sound in particular also sort of became a thematic element in the track like later on. So in this audio file here, there's a bunch of different clicks, and then I have them just spread out here. And like I was saying before, what I like to do is spread them out on a few different tracks, mess around with the panning. And the way I like to work in terms of workflow is you'll see that there's a lot of muted regions in here, like these ones like this here that are grayed out. And so I'll usually pile in a bunch of stuff, like work on a small segment of something. And this is usually before I have any understanding of what the bigger picture is. Because at this point, when you're working on a track, it's basically you're just messing around. And so I'll start with, like in this case, a 4-bar loop, and just explore, like, okay, what happens if I do this, and try to, everyone's different in that way too. I mean, that's not necessarily like if you have a whole idea for a track, that's by all means it makes the most sense to just map it out and then worry about the sounds. But a lot of times I'll start something, and I don't really know where I'm going or what's going to happen with it. So I like to just sort of play around with it and add in other elements and then make decisions about what works and doesn't. So in this case, in this session, you can see there's some muted things in here as well. Like there's this gamelan that for like 5 seconds I thought was pretty cool. But it really just kind of interferes and doesn't add anything. So that got muted and probably in the next session just deleted out of it altogether. So I'll move forward with this. Let's see where this goes next. Okay. All right, so this session, let's see what's happening. So again, this is still exploring that very minimal with the classical influence kind of sound that at the time I was listening to a lot of. So in this session, basically added in a little bit more piano, made a couple more decisions about what's happening here. Production-wise, I don't think there's anything that's that interesting, except there are these beeping sounds, which let's see if they play. So that was one of those clicks from before, and then here's one with a reverb. And again, printed to audio very early on so that I can have very precise control over, like, for example, some hits have reverb, some don't, that sort of thing. Just exploring very minimal piano thing. So let's see. I believe what happens next with this is that then I start to, like, it felt to me like this was dragging a bit. So what I wanted to do was figure out some kind of 6/8 pattern that felt like was moving along but didn't feel like a waltz, or wasn't just obvious like 1 2 3 1 2 3 kind of thing, unless that was going to work. But I couldn't make that work. So I sort of got put together a jazzy cut-up beat. So. So, still exploring the same kind of theme, these same original sounds, but depending on how many times you've heard Parks and Fire, then you might recognize that this is one of the main beat aspects of the track. And again, this beat is all constructed of audio. It started as actually kind of it's like more of a down-tempo loop. Here, I'll show it to you here. Make this big so that everyone can see. So it's basically like a trip hop like drum thing. I think it's from Planet of the Breaks. It's like Sean Lee has a sample CD. It's called Planet of the Breaks. It's really good. I highly recommend it as like source material to sample from, because one, it's not too expensive. Two, you're not going to run into any legal issues if you purchase it. Also, it's like he believe he recorded all the sounds to vinyl and had it mastered to vinyl, and then they ripped it, digitized that and made the sample CD from it. So it's really gritty and really interesting beats in there. But I didn't want to just, I have a little, like, I don't know, maybe too much pride, or it just wasn't working. It was a little too slow. So I decided to try to chop it up, and that's how I got this sort of. And I put a couple of hits on other tracks, like this one here, and notice this one has a delay on it, this dub station. And that's just a little accent that happens. So just on its own, just so you hear what's happening with that one hit. There's this dubbed out hit that sort of works in conjunction with the rest of it here. And in terms of the construction of it, since it's all with slices, you can do little things in terms of gating the lengths of some of the slices to get interesting patterns, or to have it cut off in a sort of unnatural way. Because I wanted it to sound natural, like like live drums, not synthetic, but at the same time to do something that that sounds a little glitchy, or that doesn't sound like something that a human could really play. Yeah, that's, I think, in this. Yeah, I just cut it up because what you can do is, so things have changed since I worked on this, which is for the better, which is great. Because at the time, I was in Logic 7, and there wasn't the like warping tools or the flex audio that you now have in Logic, and you didn't have transient detection in Logic, so it was a very different process. So basically, what I had to do was just go in, and then just chop it up in the arrange and just like crop it, basically the start and end points, things like that, get it all so that each hit was individual. And there wasn't really an easier automated process at the time. So yeah, I just chopped it up by hand and just do little copy and paste things. And over time, depending on the computer I'm on, I got pretty fast with it. On my laptop, and I'm still getting used to. I'm like working on different key commands on different computers, so it's a little different. But once you start getting into a certain workflow, you can get pretty fast at doing it. So I got pretty fast at moving around audio and copying and pasting bits, and getting them all to work together. So let's see, where does this go next?